Hard, heavy, and hair. Badass music for badass listeners. With Pariah Burke.
Stephen St. James has a soulful singing voice that has taken him from Motown's hard rock band, Kagny and the Dirty Rats, with a pre-BulletBoys Marq Torien, to the band Sarge, where he co-wrote some of what would become Rough Cutt's hits with guitarist Chris Hager, to finally, just in the last couple of years, reuniting with Hager and fronting Rough Cutt itself with a revitalized lineup. His voice brings back to hard rock a soulfulness, a vulnerability, but also a street corner toughness that's lacking from many bands these days. Stephen's singing ability is outdone only by his humility and kindness. I met Stephen at the very first performance of the current Rough Cutt lineup in 2019. We've been friends ever since. It turns out, we realized recently, Stephen is the only member of Rough Cutt I haven't previously interviewed. So we decided to rectify that in what would become part interview, part hangout. We talked about his time with Motown, the new Rough Cutt song Black Rose, which he co-wrote, his singing and songwriting career, how he gets along with original Rough Cutt vocalist Paul Shortino, and more.
I like your shirt.
Well, thank you.
I think I'm too close for you to see my shirt, but here.
Oh, nice.
You know, I'm a fan, so it's just like, oh, I'll wear this. Then I saw the cameras because I've got the computer right up on my face. It's we're at the dining room table, or I'm at the dining room table, and it's like, okay, I don't want to move it back. I just want to leave everything where it is because I'll break something.
Well, Stephen St. James, welcome to the Hard, Heavy, and Hair Show.
Hey, thank you.
I know we're both, so you mentioned the shirt. I know we're both whiskey fans.
Right.
And this was the one I had recommended to you recently, Woodinville.
Right. Woodinville, okay.
Yeah.
I've got to look that up. A lot of times I'll just go to the market and, find out what's there. And I always like to do the reviews because there's been some that I've tried. Somebody brought, when I was doing the COVID concerts, I always like to do that, COVID concerts. There was a guy from my old hood that brought me a $95 bottle of Willet. And, after the show, I don't like to drink before a show, and I only do it on weekends anyway, but, after the show, a few of us sat around, we were all excited about this bottle. And, I have like about 9 different bourbons, in my garage. And so we poured, we each poured a, little, tumbler of bourbon, and we all tried it. And everybody's just kind of looking at each other. And finally somebody goes, so what about that Buffalo Trace? I was like, yeah. We all poured the $90 bottle down the drain. It's like, oh my God, that's terrible. And we got, we got this other bourbon, which is like $26 or something like that. We each poured a glass, and we're like, oh, thank God. So after that, it was sort of, okay, well, I want to read the reviews on these. And that one came out really good because anytime you go to YouTube or something, you come up with the bourbon guys, these 2 guys out of the South, and they talk about what bourbons are really cool, what bourbons aren't so great. And so I'll try it a lot of the times based on that or somebody else's recommendation, and you showed me that, and I saw that, that one got a good recommendation, not just from you, but also from them as well. It's like, okay, cool. So we have one of those, what is that? Bevmo. And
I love Bevmo. I miss Bevmo.
Yeah. If I can't find something at Albertsons or at Ralph's or one of the locals, I'll look it up at Bevmo, and it's like, oh, we have it or we can get it. It's like, cool. I'll either pick it up or I'll just order it that way. My daughter, I forget what it was like right around my birthday in June, just as a pre-birthday present, I like this bourbon called Clyde Mays. And she found it on Bevmo. She goes, you want me to order that for you? I was like, yeah, that stuff's great.
Clyde Mays, M-A-Y?
M-A-Y-S, yeah. Clyde Mays.
Okay. I'll have to check that out. I haven't heard of that.
Yeah. It's, but you can't find that at the market. Most of the, you can find it at Bevmo or Total Wine or a place that carries, alcoholic beverages. So, yeah. But I want to get that one next.
It's not in some of the smaller liquor stores near me, but some of the ones with a better selection. you'll find it there. And a lot of times it's sold out too.
Yeah.
I sometimes have to go to 3 or 4 places in town before I can find it.
Yeah,
and
there's this cool bottle I saw, Puncher's Chance, out of your neck of the woods, out of Portland of all places. I haven't tried it yet, but I don't know if it's any good, but it's just, oh wow, and I looked it up and it said it was out of Portland. It's like, it's not Kentucky.
Yeah, this one's out of Washington.
Wow.
Let's see. Handmade in Washington State. It doesn't say what city or what area, but yeah, it's just Woodinville.
Yeah.
And it's about the same price as Angel's Envy, which we both enjoy. And that was kind of what made me think of this. It's a little smokier than Angel's Envy, and I like smoky.
I like smoky. That's good stuff. Yeah. I'm kind of liking this conversation already. Talking about one of my favorite subjects.
Well, okay. So next time you're in the Portland area, have you ever been to a bar called Vintage?
I haven't been anywhere up there. The reason I started going to Portland, besides to debut the show up there, there's a place out there, Sherwood Tualatin.
Yep. It's
about 14 miles outside of Portland. Cherie's brother lives there. And he has a barn, big, good-sized barn that they converted into a dance hall. He's also a pastor, and they do weddings, and they do it outdoor. And the stage where he does the weddings and stuff, you could see Mount Hood right between the frame of it's like backdrop of Mount Hood. It's real beautiful. I don't know if you know where it's a big shopping center over there. There's a Target and a Home Depot. It's on that Sherwood Tualatin Road out there.
Yeah, there's a what's it called? Spaghetti Warehouse or something like that.
Spaghetti
right over
Factory. There. He's back behind the Home Depot. They've got like a large plot of land out there. And he does like these once a month barn dances, and they do like different types of dances. He hired a Tom Petty tribute band from out here to go play up there. He's like, I couldn't get you because you guys were playing that night somewhere. It's like, oh, sorry. But that's when we started going. And then when we found out we were debuting Rough Cutt up in Portland, I was like, oh, cool. Because the other guys, they flew out and they stayed in the hotel, I think, across the street from the Bossa Nova. And, Phil, he goes, my brother-in-law's not staying in some little motel. He ended up pulling out his 40-foot trailer and lending it to Cherie and I. He had like a, full bedroom and, hot showers and stuff like that. It's like, oh, this is great. Nice. I really do kind of feel a rock star. So it was nice. And that was it was a nice break from the weather, because I remember going up there. It was Black Friday 2019. When we played. So we were headed up there 2 days before, and we got caught in that cyclone bomb snowstorm that was supposed to be hitting right there at the California-Oregon border. And we were trying to get to, what is that, Ashland or something like that. We couldn't make it that far. We found this little place just on the California side of the border. We couldn't even make it to Weed, which is, I think, the last place you go. Dunsmuir. We found this hotel room in Dunsmuir, and we stayed there. And the next morning we wake up, beautiful sky, but it was like, I don't know, maybe 21 degrees outside. We're all bundled up, loading up the car, and I hear noise across the street because this little hotel is kind of in a semi-residential area, and it's Thanksgiving now, and I see some guy outside in flip-flops and shorts and a t-shirt, which reminded me of you, when I met you. I'm sitting here bundled up. I look like that kid in Christmas Story. And, there's a guy outside getting his grill, his or what do you call that, smoker ready for his turkey. It's like, oh my God, I feel like such a sissy out here. And he's looking at us, shaking his head. It's like, he's probably thinking tourists, It was hysterical.
Yeah, every time one of our birthdays comes up, somebody reshares those photos.
Oh yeah,
on
Facebook. It was great. Here's me and I forget. I think Dave, because Dave had brought all half a ton of drums, and we had to load it in our cars. Well, man, if you guys are taking the family vehicle, I want to load my drums in there. It's like, Yeah, here we were thinking we were going to be comfortable, but we're loading up, and then we take pictures, and I'm looking at Brandon. He's wearing a light coat, and then you're just in a t-shirt, and the rest of us are in wool beanies and wool coats and stuff like that. It's like 16 degrees outside. It's like I didn't know the sky could get this cold. That was funny.
Yeah, and it just kind of highlights. I mean, I used to live in Phoenix. So, and it was 110 degrees, but dry heat doesn't hit you as bad. But still, my first trip to Phoenix was I don't know, 05, 06, something like that.
Okay.
And I go down there, and it was spring or fall, and I was living in Portland at the time. I left Portland and came back at some point. But so I was living in Portland the first time around, and I go down there and I'm teaching a class in Phoenix, and it's 108 degrees. We're in a hotel. We rented a hotel conference room, and we're using that, and the hotel's air conditioned, but step outside for a minute and just instantly drenched in sweat. Meanwhile, my students are wearing sweaters outside. And the contrast was just but then I lived. Sorry,
it's the worst problem in the world. It's like, oh my God, then you see somebody else, and you're, oh man, should I feel embarrassed about this?
Yeah, and then I moved down there a couple of years later. I was there for a little bit, and I moved to Boston, where my family's originally from.
Okay.
Or where I'm originally from, where I've got family. So moved to Boston for a few years, and the first summer we were there, and because we got there in summer, I was freezing because I was used to the Phoenix weather.
Yes, right.
So 80 degrees hit, and I'm like I'm wearing a pea coat, a naval pea coat in the summer.
Oh my God, that's funny. I still work with a cover band. It helps me keep my chops up, actually, which is great. We played Saturday. There's a place that we play. It's about a 2.5-hour drive from here. It's out near Palm Springs, a place called Indio, which is right near Death Valley. And when, I usually like to go on, social media and say, hey, everybody, this is Steve St. James from blah, 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 before we do whatever we're going to do. I stepped out there, and it was 118 degrees. It's just like nuts. And downbeat was at 7:00. And at 7:00, it was 112 when we got on stage. The second set, because we only do 2 sets. They used to do 3. Now they just do 2 sets. And then, the tribute act comes on, and they do an hour and a half. But when we got on stage for the second set, I made a joke to the audience. About 1,000 people there. And, saying it is pretty bad when we're thrilled that it dropped to 106 degrees. And I was just beat to hell by the end of that. And I know that a lot of times when you go out there, you just have to be ready for it. But they stayed open. They kind of followed the whole thing about making sure that the audience had to wear masks, whether it was hot or not. And people complied with it pretty well, which allowed them to stay. I think they closed during COVID. They closed that first June for about 2 weeks, May and June, for about 2-3 weeks. And then they just said, well, we're going to do it this way. We're going to cut the capacity, because the capacity, I think they hold about 3,000 people. It's an outdoor amphitheater style thing just outside of this casino in India. And, so about 1,500 people max. People mostly wore masks. They had people walking around, because, people want to slide them down. They'd say, hey, could you please put it back? They weren't mean about it, but, most people complied. And consequently, they were able to stay open. And they stayed open from that June all the way to about halfway through December. They not only went their entire season, but they extended their season into December instead of November. But I remember that we played there in June with the Forerunner tribute, and I was wearing a wig, and I think it was 102. It's like, that's not fun, and then we got asked to come back in December. And I think it was like 36 degrees when we played. It's like, I forgot, the desert is funny like that. It's either it's like really hot or it's really cold. And, there's almost no in between.
Yeah. So, were you out there in just like a light shirt when it was 36?
Yeah, I actually went out in a button-up shirt, just a regular old button-up shirt, and that was it. I think, yeah, I had a scarf around my neck. The band has a couple of keyboard players, and one keyboard player, he's like, "Hey, man, I made sure they put the sun lamp above you." It's just like, "Thank you," So they're all over there rubbing their arms between songs, and I'm like, "Oh no, this is great." It's like, I look up, I just can't lift the microphone stand up. I don't want to break the sun lamp. But it was funny because I just thought about that. We're just talking about the contrast between not being used to the cold or not being used to the heat. And, in June it was terrible. And in December it was like, well, with the sun lamp above me, this is pretty good. But I could tell everybody else was miserable. That was funny because, you're up there for an hour and a half, just trying to jump around and stay warm. And that's not the worst it's been.
Well, what is the worst?
I think Saturday was the worst. 118 degrees. That was crazy. I mean, it just, I couldn't wait to get back to the hotel because when you play out there, they give you hotel rooms. So, they pay you better. They give you hotel rooms, the whole thing. It's like, I just need to get in so I can get air conditioning, or walk into the casino so I can get some air conditioning on me. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
So you're in tribute bands. Which band was this?
This was Urgent LA.
Which is what your foreigner tribute band.
Yeah, foreigner tribute band. It's Urgent-LA. It was funny because we just had to, I don't know if you know Kevin Rankin. I was talking to him, about Jeff Buhner had, mentioned, he goes, "Hey, if you want to, we're trying to get it so that when you did Urgent LA on Google search, it's urgent. So the first thing you get is urgent care, all these urgent care,
You're going to have trauma victims showing up at your house.
So, Kevin's like, no, I could, here's, I'm going to look into it. I could do this or I could do that, but by the time, I got back to Kevin, because he was the one asking me about it. He goes, yeah, I went back to my IT instructor and talked to them, and they helped me. So now when you type in Urgent LA, it pops up. It's like one of the first things that pops up, which is great. So it's just.
Let's see. Yeah, number one result when I searched Urgent L.A. Urgent LA, the number one foreigner tribute band.
That's it.
Right on. It even comes up right above the map with local urgent cares.
Urgent care. That's pretty good. It's just like, can you imagine somebody needing urgent care hitting that instead? Oops, sorry.
Well, somebody shows up at your house with, sucking chest wound. You can say, well, best I can do for you is sing you a song.
I did finish my EMT1 training. It was toward the end of the 80s. So I still remember how to do most of that,
Oh, wow.
And then, Sheree did a volunteer first responder. So, both of us actually know how to fix stuff.
Were you ever an EMT?
No. Where I was living at the time, I was working with my dad. We had an insurance brokerage out in Torrance. I don't know how familiar you are with Southern California. There's a place called Torrance, and we had an insurance brokerage. When he found out that I was getting passed with a lot of flying colors, he ended up begging me not to. He's just like, the idea of you wearing a bulletproof vest and, as an EMT, a first responder, he just freaked out about that. I loved my dad when he was around, and I enjoyed working with him. And I thought, you know what, it's okay. I volunteered in emergency rooms for a while. I would do volunteer stuff on ambulances, but, I didn't pursue it. But it was interesting. I mean, it was a lot to learn. It was a lot to process, especially when you work in an emergency room, because, it was like any other job. You think, okay, well, it's going to start out slow, and, you work your way up. No, man, I was at a place out in Torrance called Little Company of Mary, and 5:30 in the morning, the first guy they bring in is an accident with a saw. It's just like, wow, this starts out quick. And I have this ability to kind of turn things off, where you don't really get emotional. I have that ability to be able to just kind of blank myself out and focus on the task at hand. I don't know if that's good or bad. It's just me.
Compartmentalization.
Yeah. I think that was something that my dad taught me, because I used to have a really crappy temper, and he just one day is laughing at me at the office. It's like, why are you laughing? It's like, you're going to die early if you don't control your emotions. He goes, you just go like, 0 to 80, like in a second. He goes, you got to just kind of learn how to relax a little bit. And, he taught me a lot about, thinking before you speak, just considering what you're going to say. Don't say things in a rush or in anger. You really kind of want to pace yourself in any situation so that you can speak clearly and make sure that you're concise about what it is you actually do want to say. That's, I think, a lot of times how people say stupid things or hurt each other's feelings or get mad at each other, is because they just blurt out the first thing that comes to mind without really thinking about what they want to say.
Yep. Yeah. Taking a beat and thinking about it, calming down. That's good advice.
And, I just got to the point where I was able to focus on, okay, well, let me consider what I want to say before I say it. So that way I say the right thing the first time. I don't have to go back and, what I meant was this or that. So,
yeah.
Also, I think some of that comes with age.
Yeah.
I hope.
You can, you can be an emotional 20-something-year-old, but eventually you start to, calm down. Things get put in a little more perspective.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You realize it's bad in this moment, but there is a tomorrow.
Right.
Right. And you have to deal with tomorrow. What you do today, you have to deal with tomorrow. Right. So taking a moment, thinking about it, not being internet culture.
Mm-hmm. Well, we tried to convey that to our two kids. They're both adults and they're doing well, and we're real happy about that. So, it was helpful lessons to just pass on.
Yeah. So let me ask you, so we mentioned Rough Cutt.
Mm-hmm.
So for anybody who doesn't know, you're the lead singer of Rough Cutt. And you're not really, now we talked about, so you and I met when the current lineup of Rough Cutt debuted a little more than 18 months ago, I think. So like you're saying, Black Friday 2019.
Correct.
But you weren't new to Rough Cutt at that time. I mean, you've had a relationship with the band and various members of the band for quite some time.
Right.
Tell us about that.
I met Chris when he was in Rat. I was in just a cover band called Sexist. We used to play at Gazzari's on the Strip, and there were, I think, 4 or 5 or 6 stages, something like that. There were a couple of downstairs stages, a couple of upstairs stages. So there were always, this band's playing, this band's playing. And I remember really liking them. Great band, and I like the way they dressed, because for me, clothing was kind of a big deal, seeing Kiss or whatever in the late 70s. That was a lot of fun. And he'd always kind of hang around and watch us. So there was a liquor store right across the street from Gazzari's, Gil Turner Liquor. And we always used to say hi to each other over there, because you'd buy, soft drink, or if you were old enough, buy a drink or whatever. And we would, we kind of became each other's fan clubs. And, eventually the thing came up where it's, hey, maybe we should start a band together. I think that he wanted to kind of ease himself out of Rat. It's not nothing bad, but I think he wanted to go a different direction than Steve Pearcy was going. So we ended up creating a plan to start a band. And we wanted to think of something like a Kiss or something where there was not just a musical aspect of it, but there was a visual aspect of it too. And ultimately we came up with Sarge, and we wrote a bunch of really good songs. We thought, and we took that first 6-7 months just playing keggers and stuff like that out in the Valley and Los Angeles area, till we kind of had a following. And we were playing whatever was popular at the time. It was Scorpions or Judas Priest, and we would throw in our songs too. But we would never say this is one of our songs, because there's always that expectancy when you say, well, this is an original, because you get that attitude, oh, well, show me. So we would just play the song. Said, don't tell people we're playing an original song. Let's just play it. So when we started hearing people sing lyrics to songs that were ours, we're thinking, I think we're ready. So, we talked to people at the Troubadour or wherever, and we started getting opening dates on Tuesday or Wednesday nights, because they would work you from slot to slot. We started drawing people, which was good. We had a bass player at the time, but over time we needed somebody a little bit better, and we went back to Rat and basically recruited Matt Thorne. And he came along, and things started going really well. And then we said, well, we need a good drummer. When we recruited a guy named Bobby Eisenberg, Bobby Marks, who was also in Rat. And I think by this time, Dave Alford joined Rat, and he said, Piercy, who we all knew, we were all friends with each other. I think Steve Piercy's like, is Steve just going to take everybody from the band? Maybe, I don't know. But I think everybody that we initially had, it was Chris, Matt, and then Bobby, they were all in Rat. And that was the crew that I saw when I met Rat, eventually became Sarge. And then, we parted ways with Bobby, and we got another drummer, Kurt Meyer, who I think when I left for Motown, he ended up in Salty Dog, which I think they recorded. Okay. Yeah. So Kurt Meyer, he was in a band called Max Havoc and Salty Dog. But he became the final drummer for Rough Cutt. So we had started recording we had recorded just a self-recorded demo, which was a song called Looking for Love, and then another song called Take You Down, which I'll get to that in a bit, but that was kind of a sing-along, more pop hard rock song. And then we had a producer come along and say, I really want to work with you guys. And this is a guy that had produced, he had engineered and also produced Kansas. There was a show out here called King Biscuit Flower Hour. I think he was a producer on that. It was always a live Sunday night thing. It'd be different artists, like the Cars live, or this band live, or that band live. And we started hearing some of his work, and we were floored by that he wanted to work with us. So we had a series of 3 songs that were originals, and then we did one cover. The cover was Paul Revere and the Raiders song called Hungry. And then we had Sound the Battle Cry, which I had nothing to do with. Then we had Out in the Jungle, which Chris, myself, and Matt wrote. And then we had a song called Prowler, which also I think Matt came up with the bass line, Chris did the guitar, and I did the lyrics and melody on that, which became I think that's on something with the other guys, Rough Cutt, the other original guys. But we had a good run. I mean, we started headlining clubs in a rather short time. We started drawing really good crowds. Bunch of starving guys, living, I think 5 guys living in an apartment. It was the four band members. And then we had the guy that did most of our road crew type of stuff. And that got kind of a little, hectic at times. It was arguing who's going to get the bedroom this weekend. But I got a call from a guy that played guitar in a band that opened for us, Howie Rice. And he said, do you like Motown? I was like, dude, I was born in Bronx. I grew up in Carson. Of course I like Motown, because both of those areas, that's a lot of the music you would hear in those neighborhoods. And he says, I have some people up here at Motown that really want to meet you on Monday. I was like, okay. And I found out where Motown was. It was on Sunset and Vine. I don't know if you remember First Interstate Bank. There was
vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, it was a big First Interstate Bank building, but they had, like, I think the top 5 or 6 floors. And I literally walked in, and the 2 producer/managers said, we want you. You're perfect for the part. It was like, I hadn't even sang a note yet, but this guy had obviously told them, that, I'd fit the bill. The way Chris had put it in an earlier interview was that they had put me on retainer. It wasn't exactly like that, but they ended up, basically presenting me with, paperwork, and, and it was over a short time. But once I signed the paperwork, they said, you got to leave your other band. So I let Chris and Matt.
So they didn't tell you that in advance?
No. So I had to leave. So what happened was they had a show come in, within, I think, a 3 or 4 week period. Everybody's kind of like pissed at the time, but they ended up hiring another singer, and they had one show that they were going to do just to debut this new guy. So I actually went to the show. I knew they were mad at me, but I still wanted to support them. I'd been in a band with these guys for about 2.5, 3 years. And I ended up sitting, because they had tables in there as well. I sat and I was watching the show, and I get a tap on the shoulder. It's like, hey, do you mind moving over a little? I said, sure, no problem. And so I scooch over a little bit. Thank you. And I turn around, no problem. Let's Ronnie James Dio. And it's like, wow, hey, and we struck up a conversation. Very nice guy. And I was like, what brings you here? And he says, well, I have this band that I'm working with, and the drummer, Dave Alford. I go, I know Dave, and he goes, yeah, he recommended I come and see these guys. And he says, and I explained, yeah, I just left the band, so they're debuting the new singer. And he goes, so you're not, he goes, you were in this band. I go, yeah, I left just a few weeks ago. I got a contract with Motown. And so he kind of like, oh, and I don't know if he was expecting to see me singing, but, he got Rob, the guy that they got, and he ended up picking up Matt and Chris, or I guess maybe he was the one that introduced Matt and Chris, to the rest of the band. And that was my early connection. I met Paul later, and we would see each other on the Sunset Strip. As something I had told somebody that was interviewing me a few months ago, when this whole Rough Cut versus Rough Cut thing came up, and he says, do you know Paul? And I told him, I said, I've only ever met him a few times. He was always a real gentleman to me. He was very nice. I liked his voice, because I would, around the time they had broken out, I was used to hearing voices that, like guys from Motley Crue or Poison or Warrant. And I noticed Paul's voice almost immediately, to me, was very, very different. He had just kind of a stronger, bluesier voice, not kind of that head tone that a lot of guys sang with. He had just this very out front voice. But I told him, I said, when I met the guy, he was always very nice. So I would see him from time to time on the Strip, say hi, we'd shake hands, whatever. Chris and I kind of remained friends. I think Matt got a little ticked at me, because we thought we were going to make it. So many bands at that time were taken off. But, my connection with Chris, I think around the time I got out of music that first time, the music biz, was around 1986, 1987. And I'd worked with a bunch of interesting people by that point. When I was at Motown, the management, they basically let go of the guy that brought me in the first place, Howie, who went on to win a Grammy. He produced the Pointer Sisters for Beverly Hills Cop, for the soundtrack. Okay. Yeah, and then he produced Menudo.
Neutron Dance.
Yeah, Neutron Dance. Thank you. He produced that, and then he produced Menudo when I think it was Little Ricky Martin before he became Ricky Martin. And I think Bobby Rosa was in the band at the time. I think that was like one of their most popular lineups. He produced those guys. So he did okay for himself. But they asked me to find a guitar player. And I was basically going up and down the Strip looking for people. And, everybody I knew was just like, hey, you interested? You interested? No, well, I think we're getting, because everybody's getting signed. I ended up finding Marq Torien of the Bullet Boys, who was a guitar player mostly. I mean, he was a great singer, but I knew him for playing guitar. And he's, I'll do it. So I talked to my guys, and I said, I think I found somebody that is very, very interested in doing this. So we brought Marq Torien in. I know this is the long version of this, but
it's okay.
But he ended up, becoming the guitar player for the band that I was with at Motown. Chris and I reconnected sometime, early 2000s. And at the time, I think he had an IT business out in San Diego. He was just swearing off music. I don't want to have anything to do with music anymore. But I was playing in San Diego 3 times a week in a cover band. I had started singing again. So he would come out and see me once in a while. He goes, it's kind of cool seeing you again. And then we lost touch again. He, eventually I think he sold his business. He sold his house and moved up into Long Beach or something like that. And then he started going out on the road with Piercy again, when it was the Rat Experience. I think that's what Piercy was calling it. So he did that for a few years. And then it was about 2018, we would talk off and on. And he called me and he's, hey, I live in North Hollywood. Well, Toluca Lake, which is North Hollywood area. He goes, well, would you want to write songs together? And we wrote good songs together. We were always able to, connect on songs. So, sure, I'd love to. So I went up and we started writing songs. So that's when he started telling me about Rough Riot, which was, it didn't last very long. It was him and Paul and Dave from Rough Cut working with Carlos Cavazzo and Sean McNabb from Quiet Riot, or, version of Quiet Riot. And, I remember going to support those guys. I was really excited, and then, ultimately Chris said, I'd like to put a band together with you. And it wasn't initially like we were saying, hey, let's do Rough Cut. It was just going to be, we were going to have a band together. So, I was hoping that the Rough Riot thing would do well, because I figured, well, that, it's hard enough trying to get out and do original music, so if things work out with Rough Riot, that's just going to make it that much easier, because, that puts Chris's name back, into prominence, as far as marquee value or whatever. And it didn't, the whole thing, I think it fell apart almost as quick as it began. And I don't know if there was, just disagreements or whatever happened. All I know is he called me one day, he says, yeah, we pulled the plug. And I was like, sorry to hear that. And I really was, because I thought it was, to me personally, I thought it was a good idea. I thought you get the best of both worlds. You get Quiet Riot music, you get Rough Cut music, but it just, it didn't pan out. So still, we just kept writing songs. It's like, okay, well, now we're going for ourselves. We're going to write, we're just going to write all these songs. And I was doing a cover band on a Saturday night. I remember this was hysterical, in Huntington Beach. And I'm loading my equipment on the stage and I turn around.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
So a singer helps with load in?
Yeah. Can you believe that? That's why I quit doing bars, is because I got tired of, Cherie's like, I can't wait till you don't have to do PA systems anymore, but I'm loading equipment, it was my equipment I was loading in. And I turn around and there's Dave Alford. Now, I was like, what the hell are you doing here? He said, hey, man, I came to see you. He goes, I wanted to check on my investment. I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, if you're going to be in Rough Cut. I was like, I'm going to be in Rough Cut. What are we talking about? So at the point,
nobody told you were hired.
Right. Nobody told me I was hired. It was just, he came to see me. And I thought it was odd because, this was near downtown Huntington Beach, which is about a 2-hour drive from where he lives in Porter Ranch. That's out by Palmdale Air Force Base. That's out in the desert somewhere. But he drove all the way down to sit and listen to about 2 sets of us, just doing cover tunes. And, he's like, he came up, gave me a hug. He goes, I got to go. I got a long drive back. I was like, not a problem. man, I love you. Let's talk this week. Sure. And, Sheree was laughing. She's going, guess who my new best friend is? It's like, oh, because he sat with her the whole time. And, Dave likes to talk. I'm singing and I could see them over there, just the whole couple of hours. It was just really funny. So, I talked to them and, went up there and we just started discussing it and talked about trademarking and the whole thing. And I know that they did reach out. Yeah, I know that they had tried to call these guys a couple of times, or more than a couple of times.
Just for clarity,
Sure.
for the people watching.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Chris Hager and Dave Alford reached out to Paul Shortino, Matt Thor, and Amir. Yeah. Amir Durak.
I don't know exactly how many times each one, but I know that they did, whether it was email or phone calls. And I know that Paul would call Chris sometimes while we were in the middle of recording songs. Hey, I need to pick this up or I need to pick that up. So, this is just stuff that I heard transpire while I was at Chris's place up in North Hollywood. And, so kind of coming out of left field saying, well, it was a complete shock or a surprise. It's like, well, that might not be exactly accurate, guys.
Well, I think for the most part, I think that album drop was just out of nowhere. But I know that, say again?
Well, it's interesting because I haven't listened to all of it. I've heard Bed of Black Roses, but there's a song on there called Electric, and we were recording Electric as well. And I'm trying to think what the other one was. Dive, a song called Dive, I think. And we have a version called Between the Lines. And I heard those songs the way that they were recorded when they released them. I heard them as, as a demo. And the thing was always, hey, Steve, can you rewrite these? Can you rewrite these? Can you rewrite these? And, it's just like, okay, is there going to be a problem? Is there going to be any clash? It's like, no, we'll make sure that we credit, when we released Black Rose, our version, if you look at the YouTube or the Facebook links, Matt was credited, every single time. We made sure of that. So, that they released it. I don't know what prompted them to do that. I don't know, where that came from. I mean, look, they were in Rough Cutt as much as Chris and Dave were in Rough Cutt. And, I would guess that they have every right to do that as well.
Yeah, prior to this year, there have been 4 Rough Cutt albums. Mm-hmm. One is a compilation, and then one's a live album. And then there was Rough Cutt, the debut album, and then Rough Cutt Wants You, their second album. And then the live was simply Rough Cutt Live. And that was all 5 of them. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they are the classic Rough Cutt lineup, but then you have the whole Rough Riot thing going on. And Paul was still with Rough Riot when Dave and Chris left, and when they brought in you and Jeff Buhner and Darren Householder. Like I said to Chris and Dave when I talked to them the day after this all happened, or the day after the new Rough Cutt III album dropped, none of you were quiet about going out as Rough Cutt. There was a lot of publicity about that first show. Right. If 2020 hadn't happened the way it did with the pandemic and everything, I imagine you'd have been out doing shows. You'd have been maybe putting out some new music. I know you've been working on it. But just out of nowhere, a year and a half after you guys debut, there's suddenly a new album and a press release. I'm going to be, screw it. I'm just going to be direct. A really poorly worded press release saying, basically these 3 guys, Shortino, Thorne, and Durak, aka Davidson, are Rough Cutt, and the main 3 guys in Rough Cutt, and anybody calling themselves Rough Cutt without them is lying to you. And they actually use that phrase. It's like, well, this is a really strange way to just announce, and then to put out an Say
that
again?
I didn't see it. It's just, now I'm kind of like, oh God, I'll see if I can find that, because the other guys, I don't know if they look. I mean, because, I say, well, I saw this or I saw that. And they're like, I haven't even seen it. So, I'm always interested. But we'll get there later. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, no, it's the liner notes and press release.
Okay. All right.
So another mutual friend of ours, Ruben Mosqueda. I couldn't remember his last name for a second. Yeah. So Ruben got a physical copy, ordered a physical copy of Rough Cutt I and did a full review of it. And I had, they had already sent me a digital copy, by the time he got his physical. And I didn't write a review. I'm not a reviewer much, but Ruben's review agrees with mine. A couple of the tracks are just demos. That's what they are. Mm-hmm. Some of them are really well produced, or some of the tracks are really well produced. Some of them are strictly demos. It's not what I would have expected to see on a released record. Mm-hmm. But I have always liked Paul Shortino's voice in just about everything I've ever heard him in, not just Rough Cutt.
Right. He's been in a few different things.
Yeah. I've always liked Matt Thorne's work. I've been aware of Amir's work, and I liked him with Rough Cutt, but I never really followed him. So I can't say whether I really like his playing or not, but I like everybody's writing and I like them in Rough Cutt. I just thought this was a strange way to do it, and I don't know what happened behind closed doors. I don't know if there was ever any outreach from them to Chris and Dave. I just thought it was a very strange way to release this. And I'm not alone in that thought. Just out of nowhere, here's an album. No, we're Rough Cutt. The other guys are lying. It was just a very strange way to put it.
It was interesting. I was at work, day job work. I'm smart enough to keep a day job. And a friend of mine messaged me from Tucson. Just, text message. He goes, "Hey, homie," because he calls me homie. And he goes, Paul Shortino's doing an interview on YouTube. And, he mentioned Rough Cutt. And, he's speaking nicely of you. And it's interesting because he does. I mean, I had interviewed with Ron Keel. I don't know if you know Ron Keel.
I know of him. And yeah. Okay.
So, Ron and Paul are real good friends, and I got along with Paul really well on the Sunset Strip back in the day. We did shows. We did a few shows together when he was in Steeler and stuff. But he says, this is kind of awkward for me because Paul, Paul's one of my very best friends. So I was like, it's no problem. And so he asked me, "What do you think?" And I think I just told him the same thing I told you. But like he was always a gentleman to me. I have nothing bad to say about that guy. I thought he was a great vocalist, is a great vocalist. And he says, "Did you reach out to him?" And I said, "Well, I did on Facebook, but it had nothing to do with music. I have a dog and I love my dog. And I noticed that, he had a few dogs and one of the dogs had died. And I just messaged him to say, hey, I'm really sorry. I could tell how much you loved your dog, and, having a dog, I just wanted to let you know, I'm so very sorry. It's a beautiful, beautiful dog." And that was it, So, and I know that when Paul spoke about me in that interview and in the one that he did to announce the Rough Cutt III, everything was cool with me. I don't think they had a problem with me personally at all. But I think that this whole thing is with him and Matt and Chris and Dave. I don't know how much involvement Amir has in it, because I think Amir's, he's still got, Julian K or one of these other bands that he does. Yeah. And I think they're doing pretty well. So I don't know. I'm just speculating. But I'm wondering, how much of this is driven by, the entire three of them, or, if it's just Matt, or if it's Paul and Matt, or whatever. It happened so sudden that, for a while. And I think, we messaged each other back and forth, you and I, where I was just, I'm just going to I'm going to hang off the phone for a while because I don't, I love my social media. I love, looking up things on Google. I like looking for history. And when the first thing I see is blabbermouth or this or that, at first it's Rough Cutt versus Rough Cutt. And I was like, I don't need this, and for a while I was talking to you about my frustrations and, it was just after a while, I came to a realization, my daughter, little side note here, my daughter, she is a ship captain and, 100-ton plus vessels. And, that job is, while it's kind of a cool job, when you're at sea, anything can happen.
Yeah.
It can be pretty burly. And she had a tough first week. And this is right around the time of my birthday, which is mid-June. And she took me to Knott's Berry Farm. And I was looking at my phone. I was like, oh my God, here's another one of these stupid articles. And she was looking at her phone and, about her rough first week as a captain. She'd had her captain's license for a couple of years, but she started what they call second op training, where she's driving this ship and there's a senior captain above her, monitoring what she does. So she says, you know what, why don't we just turn off our phones? Why don't we just turn off our phones, stick them in our pocket. We're at Knott's Berry Farm. Let's enjoy the roller coasters. Let's have a beer together. And I realized how much more cool that was when we did that. We got on roller coasters. It's like at my age, I'm thinking I'm going to die on one of these things. And, but at least I'm going to die having fun. And, it was cool. Just sit with my daughter, having a couple of beers and being on roller coasters and stuff. And I was like, I'm just going to leave that. I'm going to let that go. That will sort itself out. However it sorts itself out. And I'm okay with that. I made jokes with the guys. It's just, because they got to change their name, or and you've seen this before. You've seen this before with all kinds of bands. This band versus this version versus this version. And I started making jokes because we have a conference call once a week, sometimes more than once a week, and then we do these little conference text messages. And the memes are flying back and forth and the little jokes like that. And I said, well, it's Chris and Dave. We could call it, a Rough Cutt CD. So it's a Rough Cutt CD. And then I said we could get really edgy if we want. We could, if we really want to piss people off. Let's, we instead of Chris and Dave, we call it Dave and Chris. We could call the band RCDC. It's just, get really edgy and piss, go big or go home, right? So, at this point, look, we've got shows coming up. I don't know what they're going to work out. Not my business. We'll figure out how we're going to do the name thing, whatever. But, after 2.5 years of trying to contact them, doing a show in Portland that ended up, on, I think, one of the things about Rough Cutt setting history with a new lineup. And that was with me and Jeff and Darren, as well as Chris and Dave, saying that it was a deception, sort of like, well, again, that's not exactly accurate. It's not like we've been quiet about this. We kept a couple of the Facebook pages. We post stuff. I post stuff on my social media all the time, about Rough Cutt, and I'm sure the other guys do too. So it's not like it was that quiet. No.
And you put out, you shot that whole new video for Black Rose starring Priya Ponda, which people, if you have not seen this video, I don't care if you're Paul Shortino's biggest fan and you never want to have anything to do with Rough Cutt that isn't Paul Shortino, go watch this video, Black Rose, Rough Cutt. You're going to feel every word that Steven sings, and Priya Ponda is going to act it all out. Yeah, I mean, you're going to feel this song. Go watch this video. But yeah, so, the debut show, I interviewed Chris and Dave before the show. It was a very short interview because somebody else was doing sound check and having disagreements with the sound guy for the venue. Right. So I interviewed Chris and Dave before the show, and then I interviewed everybody after the show again. And then Sleaze Rocks was there. Ruben came and interviewed. And then Kagny. Krista? Krista with I can't remember
she did an
Krista's last
interview
name.
while I was freezing my ass loading the gear. They were all inside the nice room, doing the interview.
So
loading the gear.
For that alone, you deserve a Grammy.
Thank you. That's funny.
But it wasn't quiet. I mean, I was there. I aired the interview. It got quoted in, I don't know, a bunch of websites always quote my interviews. KNAC did the video interview. Ours was just audio. Then Sleaze Rocks, Ruben wrote up an interview and a review of the show. I mean, you would have to be outside the music business to not know that Rough Cutt was back with a new lineup and had played. So I don't know. I mean, someone suggested maybe it was less the three of them and more somebody's spouse, maybe just one person kind of driving it forward. Who knows?
Like I said, I don't know, I don't know Paul well enough. I could, again, I wouldn't speak ill of him at all. Especially, being the fact that there seems to be nothing between him and I that is, bad, other than I think we have hope, kind of a mutual respect for each other.
I would think so.
Matt, I know that, I think it was somebody told me, Matt said he wrote that song. And again, I know that he does write. And I know that if he had written the entire song, there was no reason that we should have had that same demo that they released. There's that. Just perspective. When they released Wants You, it was a second album. I rushed out to get it at a record store because I supported, I supported them. I mean, I had a couple bros in that band. There was Chris and there was Matt. And I got to a song, and Chris announced this on stage in Portland I think Dave got out from behind the drums to say something. We were doing our last song, which was "You Want to Be a Star," and that was that song was called "Take You Down." And when I heard it, I got ticked off because it's like, well, wait a second, I should have gotten my name in the song at least, because Matt wasn't even in the band, Sarge, when I wrote "Take You Down," which ultimately became "You Wanna Be a Star," which ultimately ended up on the TV show. And Chris and I went back and forth about it. And later on, he apologized about it. He goes, we kind of hosed you on that. You should have got credit. And it's like, well, I appreciate that. And, over time, you just let it go. You just let it go because it's like, I don't think anybody got rich off of it anyway. And then Prowler came out, and, here's the thing. If you want to refute it, you shouldn't have released a DVD or a CD called Sarge about 2 or 3 years before you released Rough Cutt I on the same record label, that DDR, which Demon Doll Records DDR, because that's also available there. And it's pretty evident Prowler was a Sarge song before it was ever a Rough Cutt song. And "Take You Down," if you listen to it, it's pretty easy to tell it's "You Want to Be a Star." So, did I raise hell about that? No. I mean, sometimes, things like that happen. But here's the difference is that Matt did get credit on Black Rose, but, I guess he went full on scorched earth from what I heard about the ASCAP, songwriting credits when they released the Rough Cutt III thing. So it's like, okay,
Yeah, I'm trying to remember when we were talking about this, when it first broke, one of the things, having been an actual journalist, I went and I looked up the legalities of some of this stuff. I researched the BMI and ASCAP songwriting credits and the trademark applications. I don't remember what the credit was on that. Can look it up right now. I'm sorry, were we talking about Prowler?
not Prowler. We were talking about, I think it would have been the 3 songs that we had both recorded, which would have been Black Rose, in their case, Bed of Black Roses. The other one's called Electric. And we kept that same song title. But the other one for them is called, I think it's called Dive. And
track 1 on Rough Cutt III.
Yeah, ours is called Between the Lines.
Why am I not seeing anything on ASCAP? Oh, here we go. Okay. Bed of Black Roses. Writers: Carlos Cavazzo, Amir Davidson, Chris Hager, Paul Shortino, and Matt Thorne.
Okay.
Let's see if Dive's listed. Dive is listed. Same lineup. It's just the classic lineup of Rough Cutt, the 5 of them.
Okay. So they did give him credit.
Yeah. So, and in fact, Dave's listed first on Dive.
Okay.
Then Amir, Chris, Paul, and Matt. And then Electric. So Carlos Cavazzo is listed first. Chris is listed, but Dave's not. Then you have Amir, Paul, and Matt on Electric.
I'm guessing they probably know this already.
I would think. I mean, it's public information, so.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope it doesn't turn into something nastier than it already is, but realistically, it's going to. And there's going to be a fight about it.
I hope not, but it has quieted down. I've noticed a lot. Yeah, I just haven't seen that much about it lately. We got a couple of shows coming up, and I guess we'll see what happens. We had sent in for a trademark a while ago, and then I think they did the same thing. So I don't know how that's going to go. Again, no idea.
Yeah. Well, whatever, even if you guys have to change your name, I really like the way the 5 of you sound together.
Oh, me too.
and sorry if that was a total non sequitur, but
okay.
I like the way you guys sound together. I like the way you sing the old songs. And I said this to Chris and Dave when I talked to them shortly after. There isn't a comparison between you and Paul. Anybody who makes a comparison is trying to create conflict.
Yeah, it's 2 different types of voices.
Exactly. And you both sing, Black Widow or Cut Your Heart Out. I love the way Paul sings it. I've heard you sing it live. Mm-hmm. I love the way you sing it. This is not you trying to be Paul Shortino or trying to replace him, in the sense of you could do it better. No, it's just 2 different singers taking on the same material. And then the way you did Black Rose and the lyrics you changed, the melodies, I love that song. I love how it came out. I do like their version of Bed of Black Roses. And I'm not going to say which one I like better. That's just not the point. I just like both of them as 2 separate pieces.
You could look at it this way. The fans, whoever likes either or both bands, gets 2 cool versions of the same song. So yeah. I don't see a loser for them, really. You're going to get gatekeepers, and I've seen that, a lot, on social media, where it's like, oh, know this guy, know, and it's not just us. That's everybody. Somebody says, know this person, no band. It's like, guess what? We're out there. They're out there. There's a band. You can say whatever you want, but there's a band, and people are going to go see the band, and they're going to choose to like them or choose not to. That's their choice. Saying that if this person's not in the band, it's not a band. Again, it's not accurate. That's not true. You could say it. That's just your opinion, and thank you so much for it. along with all the other bazillion opinions that fly around out there. That's just life. You got to put on your big boy pants and deal with that.
Yeah. And sometimes you just can't have the same people playing together decade after decade after decade.
People don't get along. I worked with a bunch of different people, and we butted heads, and we managed, between the time I was in Sarge and then Sarge and, I left Sarge for Motown, and I got to deal with Motown. I worked with some, great musicians. Obviously, I told you Marq Torien was in that band. And the drummer was in a couple of 70s disco type bands. I'm trying to remember Shalimar. He played drums for Shalimar, and I forget who else. Gerald Thompson, Jerry Blaze, and Cliff Lyles was in a band called Apollo. And I remember seeing them on a daytime talk show. Had no idea who they were, and the singer ended up being our manager, who I think he's like a pretty big name now. I think he, a couple of his clients were J-Lo and Mariah Carey. And he and I are about the same age. His name's Benny Medina. He was our manager. And one of the other managers, the two of them, was Carrie Gordy Ashby. And Carrie had the last name, Gordy, especially for Motown. He was family. So, we got to work with a lot of neat people on that album. And, we didn't always get along. We butted heads and stuff like that. Sometimes just outright screaming at each other. But somehow you find a way to calm all that down and, okay, let's move on from this. And, on the other hand, some people just, like you said, they don't work. Putting them in the same room is like putting two betta fish in the same tank. Eventually the water's just going to be red. There's not going to be any fish left anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not that person, or at least I hope I'm not that person. And I hope that eventually the five of them, or whoever the offended or offending parties are, work things out, and things turn out okay.
I hope so too. Because they're all great musicians, and I'd like to see them all succeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, apparently, and this wasn't officially said to me, but it was said to me by an intermediary. Unofficially, Paul Shortino won't talk to me because I gave a forum to Dave and Chris first. Which when the whole thing, when the press release and the album dropped, I immediately sent an interview request to Paul and to Chris. Mm-hmm. And then, Chris responded first and said a time for, and then he brought along Dave, which was great. But Paul would not talk to me. So I can't get that side of it directly. And, there have been other interviews with Paul, but there were a few questions missing from those interviews that I would have asked.
Okay.
So, oh well, either way, I hope it just all works out.
Yeah, same here. I know. Let's just keep it. People are wanting live music. Let's give it to them. I'm trying to always keep working. I like singing. Yeah,
and so one more point on all that, and then then I'll drop it. So M3 happened recently. Mm-hmm. And one of the bands in M3 was Steve Riley's LA Guns.
Right.
And they had a packed house, which proves in my mind just one of many reasons to believe this. It doesn't matter what you call the band. If people like the music, they're going to show up.
Right.
It was a very public, very, nasty kind of battle about the LA Guns name.
Right.
And
we just talked about that earlier,
Yeah. And Steve Riley's group had to change their name. And, so they were on the bill, and I saw the M3 posters, Steve Riley's LA Guns. There was not just LA Guns, and they played to a packed house.
Yeah.
So, if somebody has to change a name, people will still come for good music.
Right. No, I already gave you my ideas.
Yeah.
But who listens to me, right?
Well, oh, it'd be really funny if that's, what was it, RCDC?
RCDC. Yeah, that'll be great. Or a Chris, what is it? Rough Cutt CD. Either or. I think that would be funny.
Somebody online, I think it was a comment to one of it was like the blabbermouth pickup of my interview or something. Somebody said, just call your band Rough Cutt and blow them away.
Yeah, there you go. Rougher than you. That'd be good.
Or it's like, what was that alt pop band in the 90s? Better Than Ezra.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was like, well, who the hell's Ezra?
Ezra? Right.
Yeah. So
you can go on that forever too. It's just because for me, when I like I said, when I first heard it, I was like frazzled. And I'm like, you know what, and again, it was my daughter, just dad, put the phone down for a while. It's like, yeah, sounds good. After that, I just was able to kind of like, okay, you know what, this is all kind of funny. I'm just gonna keep my head above water, keep swimming, and make sure I do, a lot of things that keep me busy and not having to think about that. Because right now I don't, it's not forefront in my life. I enjoy working with the guys. I enjoy writing songs with the guys. We're still going to record, and whether we keep the name or they get the name or whatever, it's not like people aren't going to know that we're out there, because it's, whether it's like I said, Chris and Dave's Rough Cutt, who cares? Whether it's Paul Shortino and Matt and Amir's Rough Cutt, who cares? Let's just give the folks music. That's what I care about. But they'll sort that out, and hopefully, everybody lands on their feet. I think we will. I think they will too. Everybody's talented, everybody's very, very talented people, and that really kind of sets a standard for people to want to listen to you.
Yes. Yeah. So, switching tacks.
Sure.
I've spoken to a lot of musicians who regret not practicing their playing or singing during the quarantine, and I've talked to others who found creative ways to keep their playing in shape. I know you're in the latter group. So tell us, what did you do during the 2020, 2021 lockdown?
Oh, okay. This is a cheat for you because you kind of know. But
yes.
But for, when this thing started, where it was just like, even my day job called and said, you guys are going to work for the next 2 weeks just to try and get as much stuff in shape as possible. And then 2 weeks turned into 1 week, and they said, okay, go home. I think, because we're kind of expensive. We drive company vehicles, and we have to constantly order parts, to fix machines, and they're not getting any income while this is happening. So it's like, okay, go home. We're going to put you guys on furlough so you could get your benefits. They set up everything for us. They paid our benefits 100% for the 14 months I was out of a day job, which.
Wow, that's a great company.
Yeah. Well, you have them up there too, LA Fitness. So,
yeah, I call it Love Fitness because they don't have periods.
Yeah, there you go. Love Fitness. But what happened was, Sheree and I belong to a bowling league out here. And, a lot of the people in the bowling league would go to see me local if I was just singing at a local bar or something. And they said, hey, would you sing us a couple of songs? So I didn't put it on the bowling league page. I just put it on my personal page. It's like, hey guys, this is for you. And I sang a couple of songs, and I think I messed one of them up. I forgot the second verse, and you can hear my wife laughing in the background, whispering the lyrics to me. And I'm sitting there trying to play my little acoustic guitar, laughing while I'm singing. I was like, nobody's ever going to want to hear this again. And people started, messaging me or just posting on that thing. Hey, thank you for doing this. Could you do it again? So I waited a few days, and then I sang about 4 songs, and then I created it as an event. I did Friday night at 9:00, but then people on the East Coast were saying, hey, if you're going to do this, could you do it a little earlier? I said, I'm not going to do 7:00. I'm going to do 8:00. And eventually I turned it into an actual show. I'd pick out a format of songs for that week. And I try to put about an hour's worth of music together. I bought the backdrops. I dressed like I dress on stage. I set up my PA, and I'd invite a few friends over, and they would sit on one side of the room and I would stay on this side of the room. And again, I would treat it like a show, but I would do about an hour's worth of music. And somebody said, why don't you set up a virtual tip jar? So I'd always put the tip jars at the top. And that was like, I was getting good tips. It was like, this is kind of cool. But one week would be 80s hair metal. Another week would be Soul Train night. This night is just Motown. But it was great for me. And then I was getting a lot of people that were either just on regular social media or private messaging me saying, hey, listen, thank you for what you're doing. There's literally nothing to do. So thank you for doing this. I had an Air Force pilot message me, could you please do a shout out to, I think it was an Air Force base in New Mexico. It was a whole class graduating of brand new F-16 fighter pilots. Could you give a shout out to the baby Viper drivers of this Air Force, unit? And I was like, yeah, of course I'll do that. So I gave him a shout out, and, he writes me back. He goes, you're their hero now. And there were a lot of those. There was a lady out in the South somewhere that was saying, I'm in a home, assisted living home. I think she's a paraplegic or something of that nature. And she was saying, every Friday we watch you. The whole home watches you.
Wow.
So I didn't really think much about it until I started getting that kind of feedback where people were just saying, thank you for what you're doing. Whether it was just something as simple as a birthday shout out or a shout out to this home in, I think it was Alabama somewhere, or Air Force unit in New Mexico. But I think out of, 14 months, probably 70 some odd weekends out of the shutdown, I might have done about 60 weekends worth of singing. And one of the things, just, to keep the chops up that you'd mentioned was that when I got back to singing, whether it was with Rough Cutt, whether it was with just a cover band that I do on the side or a foreigner tribute, I noticed that singing stuff was just way easier because, you were as steady as possible. And look, the other thing is that a lot of people, and you've heard it yourself, you've heard bands go up on stage, whether it's a cover band or, karaoke somewhere in a bar, and you could tell when people take care of their vocals and when people don't. You just can't. I mean, especially if this is what you do. I had to generally learn 20 songs for the next Friday coming up. I took it very seriously. So in between cleaning the house or doing what I was doing in the day, because I wasn't going a daytime job, I was practicing these songs or doing scales or doing something just to try and work on my voice. You created a work ethic, even if you weren't day working, I was still working to try and make sure that this sounded as good as possible when you got to hear it on a Friday night. And I was like, I wasn't picking only easy stuff. I was trying to pick stuff that I had to work on. And I'd say as much in these concerts because I was talking in between songs.
Yep.
Letting people know, yeah, I'm scared to death of singing this one because it's not easy. I always wanted to sing that song by Starship, Jane. And I think I did it twice during the COVID concerts. And then Saturday, I was out in the desert, like I said, in 112 degrees of weather. And I sang Jane in the first set. And I was like, well, that was fun, So for me, it was kind of exciting to be able to do that song because it's not an easy song to sing. Maybe for him it is. But, for me, that was some work. But that's what I did. That's what I did to keep the chops up during the pandemic.
Right on. Any other advice for singers other than practice?
Just besides doing scales and stuff, there's, it's interesting. Go to YouTube. There's a lot of really good teachers out there. Ken Tamplin. There's this guy, Ken Tamplin. I forget he was a Christian artist or something. I think he sang on a lot of studio stuff, but he has a Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy on YouTube. And it's not just about la 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 la, it's not just about scaling and stuff like that. I've told people, I've noticed a lot of times it's about your tongue placement, your chin, where, there's a lot of things that come into play when you're singing, a lot of physical things, because your voice, your vocal cords, your diaphragm, all of that, it all kind of works in conjunction with each other. And if you want to last, you've got to take good care of it, and all of that stuff comes into play. A lot of body posturing, a lot of head and neck posturing, where you put your body, where you put the stuff comes into play when you're doing this. And over time, with a lot of work, that's kind of what sets you apart. Just my opinion, but I've been doing this a long time, so hopefully my opinion carries weight for some people.
I would think it would. So that's really good advice. So we talked about a lot of people you've played with, and Marq Torien, obviously Rough Cutt, Sarge and the Motown band, which we never actually named. It was Kagny and the Rats. Mm-hmm. Out of every performer who's ever set foot on a stage, living or dead, who would you most like to share the stage with that you haven't had the opportunity to yet?
Oh gosh, that's tough. Queen. Honestly, okay. Queen. I saw them 6 times, between the 70s and into the early 80s, and just never a bad show. Always phenomenal. They just always brought it. I would have to say that would be the band, not just an individual artist. It would have to be them as a unit. I mean, that was just such a great band, such a great list of songs. They weren't just hard rock and songs. They were all kinds of different things. I mean, think about songs like Another One Bites the Dust is an almost R&B song. And me, Motown, I did R&B. Yep. And it's funny. It's just because the list went all over the place. At Motown, if you find that album, Mark sang 2 songs on that album too, and that's when you really got to hear how much that kid shines on vocals. Well, kid, to me, he's a kid. Everybody's a kid to me. But I got to work with Dennis Edwards of the Temptations. The Temptations did backgrounds on a few of the tracks on our album. I got to sing with Smokey Robinson. The second track on side 1, back then it was LPs, so you had sides. But I got to sing with Smokey Robinson on one of the songs. Junior Walker, the played sax on Urgent, the song Urgent. He played sax on our album. I did not even know who Mary Clayton was for years. I found out by accident. But I sang with her on one of the tracks on that Kagny album. Areas, oh my God, you're singing with Mary Clayton. And I was acting excited. Yeah. I was like, don't know who that is. I found out later that, she was one of these, session singers that backed up people. But if you ever heard the song Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones, that's Mary Clayton.
Which she sang in the middle of the night. They pulled her out of bed into the studio. Yeah. But it just, I got to sing with Mary Clayton. Even if it was like one line, I got to sing with Mary Clayton. Later, when I left Motown, Mark and I worked together. We had a band, St. James, and, that lasted, I think, about 8 months. And Mark left. And at the time, I think that's how Mark and Lonnie of the BulletBoys, that's how they got together for the BulletBoys, because Lonnie was the bass player at the time with me. Oh, in St. James.
In St. James, right. And Lonnie lived in the same neighborhood as me. We both grew up in Carson, South Bay area. And I was at a place in San Pedro, a little club in San Pedro, and I was looking to audition bass players, and I just went down there to go see a band. And a few different bass players that happened to be there started approaching me and talking to me. And Lonnie just literally just walked up and said, Steve, you don't need any of these guys. Right in front of them. He's just like, because he was just larger than life, brash kid. You know, he's like, you don't need any of these guys. He goes, you just need to get me in there. And it's just like, I'll tell you what, come down to such and such studios at such and such time on Thursday night. We're doing auditions. You know, here's a tape. And I'd still audition people, but ultimately he ended up with the gig. You know, Lonnie just fit the bill best. And then what happened was when Mark left, I had happened to meet CeCe DeVille at the Troubadour. He said, yeah, I'll play guitar with you. And he ended up playing guitar with me for about another 8 months. So it was almost a year and a half, 2 years that I worked with either Marq Torien or CeCe DeVille. And it was just a blast. You know, I mean, CeCe, the guy, he could have easily been a stand-up comedian. I mean, to me, you know,
Really?
That guy always had you laughing, always had you laughing. Yeah, he was a trip.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be talking to Marq Torien soon. At least I'm hoping to. My assistant's trying to set it up.
Cool.
Is there anything you would like me to ask him or say to him, or maybe a question I could put to him that kind of puts him on the spot in a good humored way?
You know what? Tell him I'd love to do a duet with him. I saw him at I saw him at an iHeart music thing over. It was about 3-4 years ago. Who was it that went out? It was Jack Russell's Great White, Enough's Enough, and the BulletBoys. And you know, we were leaving. You know, when the show, a great show, all three bands. I had never seen Enough's Enough, and you know, I know that they're talking about the original singer and Chip and whatever, but the version I saw was with Chip, and I had never seen the band, but I loved their songs. So for me, I had a blast. I enjoyed it. And like you said, you know, I mean, look, here's the band with the name at the time. I saw them. I liked them. I had a great time. You know, BulletBoys, you know, that's my bro up there singing. So of course I'm going to have a good time. And, you know, and Jack Russell and his Great White, they did a phenomenal job. I was walking downstairs leaving the House of Blues Anaheim, and Steve, you know, and it's Mark, you know, and he's like signing autographs and taking pictures with people, you know, big old bro hug, you know, and it was just cool. We chatted for a bit, and, you know, just like, you know, he's like, looks up, he goes, this is the guy that got me into the music business. And everybody's like, come on, you know, can I get my, you know, get my autograph or whatever? But, you know, it was just very, very familial, you know. We still, I think we had that connection, just really good vibe going on between the two of us. So yeah, it's just, you know, tell him it'd be fun to do a duet. You know, that guy's a great singer. Okay. He's got a set of pipes on him, you know, you know, so it's just, you know, he's always fun. His drummer and I get along really well, Jimmy. You know, we always joke with each other. You know, he's a kick. So anyway, they're, you know, tell him hi, give him a hug for me or something. Give him a virtual hug.
Okay. All right. So you're playing with Rough Cutt in a few days. Let's see, Georgia and
couple of weeks, yeah. July 31st in Atlanta, August 1st in Greensboro.
Right. Okay. Anything booked after that, or any other plans?
With Rough Cutt, I'm hearing talk, but you know, again, I don't want to, you know, until it's set in stone. Yeah. You know, I don't want to say anything. Don't want to jinx it. You know, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that those happen. But yeah, there's a few.
Anything else booked with Urgent LA?
Oh God. Yeah, we've got the cover band. We're playing at a place out in Huntington Beach on the beach, which has become like a new hot place. That's, you know, a place called Sea Lakes out in Huntington Beach, which ought to be fun. That's August 21st. And then at the end of August, early September, Urgent is doing a show called Fiesta Hermosa in Hermosa Beach. Then I think a week later, we're doing Rock and Brews at San Manuel Casino on a weeknight. And then that Friday night, we're back out at the Rock Yard doing that show. You know, doing the Urgent show in the Rock Yard. Hopefully it won't be 118 degrees then.
Hopefully not.
Right. And, for people out here, in Southern California, that if you ever get a chance, that's a great place to see a show. In fact, Buhner flew out. I don't know if it was just for us, but, he showed up with, a few of our mutual friends, and Cherie's filming, we're singing at the Rock Yard, and Jeff's going, "Are you filming this?" And she goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, good." And he walked right in front of the camera, put his face in it. So I'll send it to you. I screenshot that. And he's just looking in the camera, and you can kind of see like arms sticking out from his head from where he's making sure he can block the shot. That was funny. But he's, Jeff's a good guy.
Yeah. And just for people who don't know, Jeff Buhner is the bass player in Rough Cutt. He's also in the Loyal Order with another mutual friend of ours, Brandon Cook from Black and Blue.
Right.
Yeah. Great band, local band. So, they've got a special place in my heart, not just because I know all the guys, but also because they're from Portland.
Right.
So,
right. It's funny. I bragged, and I don't know if it's true or not. I said, I think, because I get up early, I get up at 5 o'clock, and I ended up seeing that when the actual album went on sale, I bought it. And I said, I think I bought it first. I think I got the first virtual copy of it. I hope I did. Nice. But yeah, it was just, got to support my friends. I was never one of those guys, like, a lot of the times, especially, in the circles that, we ran in the Sunset Strip, "I'll get you a free copy. I'll get you a free copy." I said, please don't do that. I want to buy it. I'd rather buy it. I've always been one of those people that I don't care what other people do. That's their business. But for me, I like the idea of, if you're putting out a product and you put your heart and soul into it, I don't want it for free. I want to buy it. It means that much more to me when I buy it. That's all.
I'm like that too. I'll either, I know a lot of musicians, it's easy enough to say, "Hey, put me on the list." But most of the time I will pay for a ticket. If I'm working the show, I'll get in,
Right.
A lot of times the venues, I know the venue owners, just be like, "Oh, well, this show's in your line of work here. You're on the list automatically," things like that.
Yeah.
So I'll either buy the CDs, or I'll buy a T-shirt, I'll buy something from the merch.
Do something to support it. Right.
Right.
It's hard enough now. It's again, it's not like, not like anybody's making millions of dollars on record sales anymore. It just,
right.
It doesn't work that way. So, for me, it's, also, exactly what you just said. I like to support them any way I can. Plus, I love the T-shirts. I chop them up and make them stringers.
I did not get a Rough Cutt shirt. I wonder if I can still order from the site. But for anybody who's listening, the websites are Rough Cutt Official, and remember, Rough Cutt has 2 T's in it, and excuse me, and Urgent LA, urgent-la.com. So roughcutofficial.com, urgentla.com to find Steven's bands. So
thank you,
Steven St. James. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me on the show.
Absolutely, man. This was a blast. It's always fun talking to you, whether it's this or just private message. It's fun talking to you. I enjoy chatting with you, man. That's great.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, my daughter, she's like, "Which one is Pariah?" I said, "Remember the one with the long red hair that was out there in the T-shirt?" She's, "That guy." She remembers as soon as I said the T-shirt, "That guy."
It was
great.
hot.
Yeah, it was hot.
And I spent your entire set. So Darren had given me had come up to me.
That was you?
Yeah. He gave me his phone. He's like, "Hey man, can you do me a real favor? Can you just video us the whole time?" So I'm standing there literally with the amp to my head. Oh, God. And I had earplugs in, but still,
it's not quiet.
No. And I'm, just videoing the whole set.
Yeah. I've seen that video. Good video.
So I was hot.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, for me, I walked outside and it was like, oh my God, I just stepped on a Pluto. It's so cold. Oh man, then Dave, "Hey man, can you put this drum over here? Can you put this?" It's like, just shut up. go away. Let us load your drums and, just be quiet. I don't want to, you should be doing this. I know, he has a bad back. So it's like, okay, well, let's, me and my family took care of it for him.
Well, that was nice of you.
We're nice people.
Remember, to hear the music discussed in this interview, stream the on-demand Hard, Heavy, and Hair show at pariahrocks.com.
That's PARIAHROCKS.com.
Also hit pariahrocks.com to stream or listen on a radio station near you. The regular 2-hour Hard, Heavy, and Hair show with me, Pariah Burke. Hard, Heavy, and Hair is your weekly dose of hard rock, heavy metal, and hair bands from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 20-teens, and today, including the latest new releases, your old favorites, and deep cuts and rare hair, along with rock news and trivia.